Your life journey doesn't stand still, and neither should your wealth. Welcome to Wealth on the Move, the podcast. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Wealth on the Move, the podcast. I'm your host, Will Hoffman, founder and president of Hoffman Wealth Management. And today we are going to talk about really something that we see as a huge hurdle for folks as they are matriculating their financial lives. And our guest today has some solutions. And we like to think we have, a lot of solutions, a lot of strategies, a lot of ideas. But the one area that has really, other than if you have an abundance of money, that we've always struggled to help folks with is being able to save for and pay for college. We're at the beginning of the school year, kids are back to school, parents are back to worrying about what's next for their kids. Kids are worrying about what's next with their educational futures. And we know we worry about how we can help. And it's a struggle because college has exploded when it comes to the price. It has exploded when it has come to how much it costs and how we're going to get the money to pay for this. And today's guest is Dave Peterson. Dave has a company called the Scholarship Coach and Scholarship GPS. And he is going to talk to us about how to find the money that isn't a loan. It isn't savings. It's out there for all of these kids and all of these students to go find and apply for and get, and to help defray the cost of college and get them on a path to financial success much, much earlier. Dave, welcome to Wealth on the Move, the podcast.
Will, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to doing this with you.
Yeah, and it's something that, again, I wish I knew a lot about. I have a 14-year-old son. He's a freshman in high school this year, so I am going to be asking a lot of questions that I personally want to know the answers to.
Perfect.
And we know that college debt it's growing and it's becoming borderline insurmountable. We know kids are leaving college with tremendous debt loads. And, unfortunately, it's putting them behind in a lot of regard, whether it's buying a house, whether it's getting started on retirement savings. We know that it's handcuffing them, and we want to help them through this and help them find these options. And that's exactly what your company does, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And it was born out of necessity because, I had not done the proper savings that I'm sure you're advising your clients to do. And when my son was in high school and I thought I need to see what this is going to cost, after I picked myself off the floor from having a heart attack, I quickly realized we had not done the proper savings. And so that's how I got into this business. It was out of necessity for my son's future.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, how are you helping kids? What we're going to get into your process and what you do things with, but how much money is out there for kids to go find through this process?
Yeah. So I don't have a total, what's the total pot available, but sure. I have seen statistics backed up by the Department of Education that something like $100 million of scholarship money goes unclaimed every year.
Oh,
and that's gosh. Just what goes unclaimed. So you figure what people are actually getting, it's probably 100 times that.
Sure.
There is just billions and billions of dollars of scholarships out there for the students who will put in the time and effort to find them, to apply for them, and then, of course, use a process to have success with it.
Now, and help us understand, when you say scholarships, this isn't just from the institution or from the school to go play a sport.
Correct.
Where are these scholarships?
I bundle things into three different categories of scholarships. The first would be need-based scholarships. Most need-based scholarships come from the colleges based on the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid.
Okay.
I'm guessing probably your audience isn't going to qualify for much of that if I had to guess who your typical listeners are. But if you do, fantastic, that type of aid is out there. So that's bucket number one. Bucket number two would be merit scholarships, also coming from the colleges. Within that bucket are three different categories, all essentially working the same, though. It could be an academic scholarship, an athletic scholarship, or an artistic scholarship.
Okay.
These scholarships, like I said, come from the colleges, and most colleges award most merit scholarships at the time of the admission process. So usually you'll get admitted to a college, and either right then or soon after, that college will say, congratulations, we're also giving you this much in merit scholarships.
Okay. And is that a mechanism that they use to attract the best and brightest?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. It's just like, putting a coupon in the newspaper to drive somebody to your store. It's the same thing. So,
Okay.
yep. And students earn those based on their past achievements. It really is based on what they did in high school, whether it was, have a great GPA, great test scores, or if they're a great football player, or,
Sure.
maybe a great dancer or something like that. The third category, and this is where I spend most of the time in my business working with the families I work with, are called outside or private scholarships. These don't come from the colleges. Instead, they come from private businesses and philanthropic organizations. And how students earn them, there's a pretty wide range. Some of these scholarships have high GPA or high test score requirements, but tons of these scholarships don't. They're interested in something else. Maybe it could be focused on students going into a particular major or students of a particular background. There's just so many different types of outside scholarships available, which is why this is such a huge opportunity for people to take advantage of.
Sure. Now, and you said from companies, and I'm assuming like service organizations and all types of. I mean, I know my wife and I are on the board of our local neurofibromatosis clinic, and we offer scholarships from that board to local NF patients when it comes to
Okay.
them, achieving. So, is that what you mean by these outside or the third bucket?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
So organizations like the ones you just mentioned, one of my favorite scholarships comes from the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign War. They offer top prize is $35,000,
Wow.
and they award, I think it's close to $2 million to students every year. It's open to all high school students, not just seniors. And it can also range to large multinational corporations, Coca-Cola, Chick-fil-A, Burger King, and then small companies, maybe your local electric provider. Credit unions often offer scholarships, typically only for their members. But
Sure.
any business that you are aware of, check it out. They might have a scholarship that your student could apply for.
And you said something there that I want to dig in on for a second. Not just for seniors.
Yeah. Yep.
So these are things that my son, who's a freshman, can start eyeing up and applying for now. And if they win this as a freshman, do they just need to wait until? Is it just a cash prize, or do they need to wait until they're enrolled into another facility or another institution to use that?
Yep. So it will vary from scholarship to scholarship.
Okay.
Some of these scholarships actually just send a check to the winner of the scholarships my son earned. I think he probably had about $20,000 just directly sent to him. But I would say
Wow.
the vast majority will hold the funds in escrow until the student does get into and start attending a college. So
Okay.
that's going to be the bulk. But yeah, some of them, you could even think of it like a part-time job for the student to try to earn some of these
Sure.
scholarships. Yeah.
Well, in the research and wow, that's incredible. And this is so important. Again, we talked about the ever-growing cost. And I know on our end, ideally somebody comes in the day after their child is born and says,
Mm-hmm.
I want to start saving. And
Yep.
even when you do that, it's an 18-year time horizon.
Yeah.
It's only 18 years. Parents, I know I don't have to reiterate how fast time goes and how fast those 18 years go. And if you're the parent of a high school senior now, you're sitting there wondering, where did the time go? That's what's so challenging for I know my peers in our profession is we only have 18 years. We have 40 to 50 years to help you build for retirement. We have 18 years to help you save and earn and grow enough for what could cost $300,000 to $500,000. We see these schools now charging $80,000 or $90,000 a year, and we want our kids to have these opportunities. We don't want to be the reason they can't take advantage of these opportunities, but that's a short time frame to save enough. And regardless of the types of an account that you use, you have to take into consideration all of the variables of things that could get in your way. Whether it's career changes, whether it's job loss, whether it is, the market doesn't always go straight up. and so we challenging market environments. And all of that is is something else. So I hope our listeners are understanding how important the information that you have is and how impactful this can be on their family wealth, on their child's educational trajectory, not needing to rob their 401ks or IRAs for school. This is very powerful information that you're about to get into with us. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Wealth on the Move, the podcast, brought to you by Hoffman Wealth Management. Here at Hoffman Wealth Management, we focus on working with busy families and active retirees, helping them navigate the complicated scenarios of their wealth while building the life that they desire. And we believe that every financial journey deserves direction. That is exactly what our proprietary process, the HWM navigation formula, provides. Just like a GPS, our navigation formula begins with two key questions. Where are you now? What does your financial picture currently look like? And where do you want to go? What goals and dreams do you have? From there, we help you navigate every financial turn en route to your desired destination with clarity and confidence. It's more than a plan, it's a personalized path forward. If you want to learn more on how the navigation formula can work for you, reach out through the contact options in the show notes below. We would love to help you chart your next move. Now, back to this episode of Wealth on the Move, the podcast. So as we talk about the scholarship landscape, Dave, what is the biggest misconception that families have about these scholarships?
Well, there are several, and I cover some of those in some free videos on my website. But I guess if I had to narrow it down to one, it would be that parents think that scholarships are only for students in their senior year of high school.
Okay.
There are scholarships open even to grade school students. Now, I'm not saying there's thousands of them, but there's a handful of them.
Okay.
By middle school, there's more, and then by freshman year of high school, there's several handfuls of scholarships that a student can apply for. And then senior year is the big year, and I think that's where that myth comes from.
Sure.
But because it's the big year doesn't mean it's the only year. And then scholarship opportunities don't end when they graduate high school. There are, I think by sheer number, even more scholarships open to students currently in college. So scholarships, in my opinion, should be something that you introduce into your family as early as possible. It just builds a culture of what we do as a family is we apply for scholarships. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be a 24/7 thing.
Sure.
But it should be something the student does, especially I think by high school, just like they're doing their homework regularly. They may have chores, maybe they have a job, they might volunteer, they play a sport, whatever. Just build that into the family routine that we're going to spend a little bit of time, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is, to work on scholarships.
And you just said something else. So I was amazed to know what your last talking point was, that it doesn't just start your senior year, but this continues on through college.
Yeah.
So
yep.
You graduate from high school, the clock doesn't stop.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I like to say that the only time you can't earn a scholarship is after you've graduated and potentially taken on that student loan debt.
Okay.
Which is still, I would still say that, but I did actually find a scholarship in the last year or so that will, if you have graduated, they'll help pay off your student loans. So,
oh wow,
I guess it's technically never too late, but that is a one-off opportunity that I found.
And who qualifies for these? Is it only academic superstars, that top 5%? Is it only athletic superstars? How do you determine what you qualify for?
Yeah. Yep. So again, let's think back to those three buckets. That first need-based aid, who qualifies for that is going to be people without much savings and on the lower income scale.
Okay.
The second bucket, the merit scholarships, those are for high-achieving students, whether it's an athletic superstar or an academic superstar or an artistic superstar.
So study hard, practice hard,
study hard,
teachers, listen to your coaches. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. But then that third category, the private outside scholarships, there is a wide range. Some of them do have minimum GPA requirements. I would say of those that have a minimum GPA, it's usually like a 3.0 or above. So, it's not a low GPA, but it's not insurmountable for most students today. But there are tons of scholarships. And I mentioned the VFW scholarship earlier. Yeah. There's no GPA requirement at all. They literally don't ask a thing about the students' grades, test scores, anything. It's simply about write this essay on this year's prompt, and the best essay wins. And there are just tons of scholarships out there for students of all interests, all academic abilities, all backgrounds. You name a characteristic, and I can find a scholarship for it.
What's and I may be jumping ahead from our rapid fire questions, but what's one of the most obscure scholarships that you've seen somebody win?
Well, I've never seen anybody win it because I've never seen anybody apply for it. I've never worked with anybody, but I've found a scholarship for people who are left-handed. That's always the first one that jumps out to me. I've seen scholarships for people who are red-haired people. I've seen scholarships for tall people. So,
man, I missed. I'm 6'5". I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
Could have lightened the load a little bit. Jeez.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm 6'5" and I was a lousy basketball player, so I needed that scholarship.
You weren't going to get that merit scholarship,
No,
right?
no, nope, that's for sure. So, talk a little bit about the scholarship GPS system and your process with working with students when they start with you, and how you progress with them through the scholarship search process.
Sure. So I work with students and families starting as young as ninth grade
Okay.
into college. The process is very similar for whichever, wherever the student is at academically. Basically, there are five kind of high level steps. First is finding scholarships. There's tons of sources out there that I use internally to find scholarships, and there's tons of sources that parents and students can use to find scholarships. You put in any time and effort into finding scholarships, you will very likely find far more scholarships than the student could possibly hope to apply for. So the second step is narrowing down your list, funneling that list. There are some strategies and tactics to knowing which of these scholarships give me the best odds of winning. Now, best
Okay.
odds doesn't mean guaranteed, but you
Sure.
can know based on certain characteristics which ones align better for the student than, say, another scholarship. So that's step two. Step three is the actual application process. And of course, there are lots of best practices around that. Everything from simply being professional and following the directions for the application. I talk to lots of scholarship providers, and they all tell me they reject more applications than they accept because students just don't follow directions. From there, writing a good essay, having a strong personal narrative, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but those are the kind of key factors for that third step of the application. Fourth is keeping track of everything so you're not missing deadlines of the scholarships you're wanting to apply for in the future, but also keeping track of the ones that you have applied for so that you don't miss a notification that you won one, which brings us to step five is what do you do when you win? Now, if you only win one scholarship, it's probably cut and dried. But if you start to win a lot of scholarships, then you need to know how each of these scholarships is structured so that you get every dollar that you have earned. Some of them may say you can only use this your first year of college. Well, those are the ones you want to tap into first
Sure.
if you have enough of those to cover first year, and then save the others to tap into for years 2, 3, and 4 if they will allow it. So that's the fifth step is all these considerations after you start earning these scholarships.
Okay. Anything that folks need to watch out for when it comes to scams? Is
Yeah,
that, I
I would
mean, if
say,
someone's creating a scholarship scam, I mean, any scam really, there's a special place for you. But,
yeah, for sure.
specifically preying on kids who are trying to improve themselves through education. But I'm sure there are.
Yeah, so one of the first things I would do is if I ran across a new scholarship I wasn't familiar with is does this organization do something else? Can you see that this is an actual business providing some kind of other good or service, or is it a legit charity or community foundation type organization? That would be the first thing. Second would be if they're asking for something like a social security number as part of the application, that's a big red flag.
Okay.
Scholarships
That's good to know.
do not need that. Yeah, yep. They definitely don't need that as part of their application. They may ask for that if you are selected as the winner because there may be some tax implications, and
Sure.
of course they have to report to the IRS. So I think those are two big red flags. There are about a dozen scholarship warehouse sites that I use every day when I'm looking for scholarships with the students I work with. I actually have a free list that I can share with people. I got to make sure I give them the right address. I hope I have it up on my
Well, if you
thing
send it to
here.
us, we can we'll put it in the
Okay,
show
yeah,
notes
we'll
on
do
all the
that. Yep.
sources. We'll make sure we include that in the
Yeah.
show notes for everybody.
Yep. Yeah. So there's about a dozen sites that if you're using those, first of all, if you fill out a profile on those sites, most of the sites are good about matching scholarships based on that profile.
Okay.
But most of these sites also do a very good job of vetting the scholarships that are on there because they don't want to say hey here's a scholarship and then it turns out to be a scam. It's not in their best
Sure.
interest to do that. So I rarely go outside of those sources for kind of the big national scholarships, and then there are some techniques I use to find local scholarships in the students' town, city, state, and so forth.
Okay. So listen up, kids. Listen up, parents. Beyond grades, what are some things that kids and students and parents should be helping their kids with to get them to be an attractive scholarship candidate? Or so you already mentioned the big thing is following the instructions on the application, but
Yeah, yeah.
what do they need to be doing to put on that application that makes them an attractive candidate for a scholarship?
Yeah. So This actually goes back to one of the other myths that I often see when people are thinking about scholarships, and that, especially as we're talking about these outside private scholarships, they're not an award for something that the student has done in the past. So having a high GPA or a high test score, it may be a bar to be able to apply for a scholarship, but it's not going to win the scholarship. What
Okay.
my experience shows is that a strong personal narrative is what wins scholarships. And a personal narrative is basically the student's story of, what do I want to do in the future? See, these scholarships, they want to be a part of that future success. Now, that doesn't mean that, Billy, a high school senior, can say, I want to be an astronaut. But then you look back at his profile, whether it's academic or extracurricular or what have you, and he's terrible in science and, is not doing anything that seems related to it. So
Okay.
you have to have a story of where you're going, and then you back it up by your past experiences and achievements.
Okay. That's great
Yeah.
insight. Great to know. So really, and again, with a high school freshman, I'm starting to, sharpen my research on the college application process.
Yeah. Yep.
And it seems to kind of fall in line with that, because the college absolutely wants to be a part of your future endeavors and future success. And
Absolutely.
that personal narrative, we seem to think that we've got to be in that top 2% of our class, or we've got to be in the top 2% of test scores. But colleges seem like now they're looking to build a class and build an
Yes.
environment that
Yes.
extends beyond the classroom.
Absolutely.
And the scholarships are about the same way. That's great to know. Now, I do have a question. Let's say somebody wins these scholarships
Mhm.
and accumulates these scholarships, and that doesn't need them.
Okay.
Gets a full athletic scholarship, or
Mhm.
gets a full academic scholarship. What happens to them, to those scholarships? Do they get recycled, reused? Can they say, I'm going to save this for my little brother? How do they do that?
It really will depend on the particular scholarships that the student has earned.
Okay.
Like I said, some of them send a check to the winner. So if you don't, quote, need it because you got a full ride for playing football or something, well, then there's money just in your bank account to use however you see fit. Some of them will say, congratulations, sorry, but there's really nothing we can do. So we will probably pick another winner.
Okay.
So it really will vary. I guess the worst problem to have, though, if you're applying for scholarships, would be to have more than you need.
Sure.
That seems like a good problem to have, rather
Right.
than the other extreme where you don't have any money to go for college, and
Right.
and you're
Agreed.
hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
Now, how do these kids, I guess, build that narrative? I mean, is it through community service? Is it through, it's 2025. Every platform is open to everybody at this point. So,
Yeah.
What's the best way for a kid to build a narrative? And does your process help them with that?
Yeah, well, especially if they start working with me early on, say as a freshman, sophomore, maybe even to junior year. By
Okay.
senior year, your narrative is kind of built.
Sure.
You're applying for scholarships, so yeah, you could do a few things senior year to maybe bump up your later scholarship applications. But by senior year, you kind of have what you have, so you got to work with that. But I like to take kind of a funnel approach. So freshman year, my advice is for the student to try anything and everything that they may have an interest in. I call them the 5 pillars: academics, extracurriculars, volunteering, leadership, and work or employment.
Okay.
So academically, take as difficult a course load as you can. Academic rigor really matters both for college admissions and for scholarships, but don't make it so rigorous that you don't achieve good grades.
Okay.
But like we said, some of these scholarships aren't even looking at grades. So while in some for some scholarships, a high GPA may be necessary, it's never sufficient. You have to do things outside the classroom. So a high school freshman, join some clubs in your school, maybe volunteer, in the community in some way. Freshmen might be a little difficult just because of their age. But if you can get a job, try to find a job that relates to something you're interested in. I think back to one of the very first students I worked with, besides my son. She wanted to become a veterinary technician, and she was working at some fast food place. And I said, hey, could you go get a job at a pet store instead of working at whatever the fast food place was? You're going to make about the same amount of money. You're probably going to enjoy it more, and it's going to help build this personal narrative of wanting to work with animals. So she did that, and she loved the job, and she won it might have been literally the first scholarship that I worked with her to apply for. Now, I'm not going to say that just having that job switch was enough because she had some other things working with animals. She volunteered at a animal shelter and did some other things that definitely demonstrated this interest. But maybe it was marginally better than the next person who may have won the scholarship who wasn't working at the pet store. So freshmen, try everything, kind of figure out what you like. Sophomore year, cut out some things that just don't resonate with you. Junior year, hopefully you'll have found one or two things that you really love, and that's where you can start to build that leadership pillar by taking some leadership roles in these extracurriculars and outside things. And then by senior year, you'll have built a pretty strong personal narrative.
Awesome. Great advice. I want to talk a quick second about the importance of applying for these, even if you think you have saved enough for college. There are rules changing every day. Secure Act 2.0 just created a new rule that if you have unused money at the end of college, and that's, I know that's hard to imagine, especially if you are the parent of a freshman in college right now or a senior of college. But you follow Dave's advice, win scholarships, and have money left over. There are options now that you can, if you've been saving your child's entire life, you can now move 529 money into a Roth IRA. And that process is, it's something that still is new and getting figured out. But the reality exists that not only do these scholarships help pay for college and help alleviate debt, but whatever's left over from savings gets these students really on the fast track to retirement, because of the new rules with the Secure Act 2.0. So while we are trying to understand what's available, please understand that if you have saved sufficiently, it's still a great idea to attack Dave's process and listen to his advice, because this can go beyond college and beyond tuition and beyond room and board and beyond a meal plan. And this can go to start thinking about retirement. And I know that that's not the main reason we're saving, but we're talking about, we want to compound and we want to grow and we want to develop and alleviate the financial stresses. And that's another way to do that and to think about it. So if you have saved and sitting with your advisor and feel comfortable in how much you have, it's still really worth listening to Dave's advice and applying for these scholarships and to look. So if we have a family with a high school student, what's the immediate thing that they should do, Dave, when it comes to scholarships? If they're listening to this right now and saying, okay, now we're going from not knowing about this to, billions of dollars of scholarships in front of us, what's the first thing that they should do to start to organize this so they don't feel so overwhelmed?
Can I give you two?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So I think the first would be try to define what that student's personal narrative is, or what they want it to become.
Okay.
So if we're talking, like we said earlier, a younger high school student, building that personal narrative or working towards having a compelling personal narrative, really, I think would be the first step. But let's say a student has kind of started to define that. The second is just simply going to be finding the scholarships. Like I said earlier, it doesn't take too long to build a list of scholarships that the student is eligible for. And then once you have that list, you have a target to start actually applying for. You know what your deadlines are. You know the sequence that you're going to apply for them. So just having that list is a very nice visual cue of what is the work that we need to do over the coming weeks, months, and years.
And you help them organize all of that. You help them find what's available, stay organized, hold them accountable to filling out applications and submitting them.
Yeah, I offer a variety of services. One is more of a DIY where I share everything I know about scholarships through a video-based course.
Okay.
So those folks would be on their own finding the scholarships, but I've taught them how to do it. Then I have more personalized services where I still encourage them to look for scholarships, because I'm in Florida and you're in Pennsylvania. Well, I don't know every little local store in your area that may offer
every American
scholarships.
Legion or every
exactly. So
Kiwanis organization.
It's always a partnership, but more personalized. I do build lists of scholarships for students based on their profile.
Okay, and then do you proofread the applications and do all of that?
Yeah, that's probably the most important part of the one-on-one services is reviewing the applications, reviewing the essays. Depending on how long I've worked with the student, sometimes for a single scholarship, we might go through 3, 4, 5, 6 rounds of review for an application and essay. Hopefully, if I've worked with them for a period of time, they almost always do get better at the process, and the number of reviews will go down to 2 or 1. Oftentimes by like middle to end of senior year, it's very much plug and play. We've written we've essentially written this essay before. We might make a tweak here and there just to customize it, but we're plugging in the same information over and over. The goal is to apply for scholarships is goal number one.
Sure.
Submit quality applications would be goal number two. And then goal number three would be submit quality applications that we don't have to start from scratch every time.
Okay. Do scholarships interview students?
Yeah, they do. It's not incredibly frequent, but they do. It's usually not the first step in the process.
Okay.
Some scholarships have a multi-step process. Coca-Cola is probably the most well-known that does this.
Okay.
I always encourage my seniors to apply. You do have to be a senior, and this is one where you do have to have a minimum GPA. I believe it's 3.0. Don't hold me to that.
Okay.
But two reasons I suggest seniors apply if they are eligible is one, you don't even have to write an essay in that first round. So It's not super arduous. The second is the format that they use is very similar to a lot of other scholarships that the student will apply for in the future. So it's great practice. I always tell the students I work with, if I'm recommending they apply for Coca-Cola, I don't know, this might seem a little weird, but I always say, hey, we're not expecting to win this because 200,000 students apply for Coca-Cola every year.
Wow.
Even if you are the best
How
of
much
the
of
best,
a scholarship is it?
It's $20,000.
Okay.
So, it's not nothing, but
Sure.
I don't know how they got so much traction. It's definitely, I think, the most well-known scholarship that my guess is probably gets the most applications. But I always tell them, we're not expecting to win this. We're hoping to win it. But just that practice and kind of getting used to the process, it is a great kind of entry point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then back to interviewing. Do you help kids prepare for the interview? Do you do role playing with them? How do you do that?
Yeah, I do. So if the student does have an interview for a scholarship, I will do mock interviews via Zoom like we're doing now to walk them through that process. And I'm sorry, that was the reason I brought up Coca-Cola was that I think step 2 is they do submit an essay if they move on to that second round. And then the third round, I believe, is an interview. So that was just one example. But yeah, I worked with a student last year, actually a couple of them who interviewed for full tuition scholarships. One of which didn't get the top prize, but did get a prize from that pool. And then another who did get a full tuition scholarship that I helped her interview for, or helped her prepare for the interview.
Congrats, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, parents, we're going to move on to our lightning round. Parents and students, actually, we're going to move on to our lightning round. But make sure we're going to put everything we can in the show notes. And then Dave will give us some ways to reach out and connect with him and follow him and get his content, at least on your radar. So you can start positioning yourselves and your students for future financial success when it comes to scholarships. So some rapid fire questions. What are some great scholarship websites that folks should be checking out?
I would say the first one I usually check is called scholarships.com. They have a very large database. I will say I don't love them quite as much as I used to in past years. I've noticed that a lot of their scholarships, maybe I shouldn't say a lot, enough of their scholarships are no longer available. They're no longer being offered. That it can be a little frustrating, but that's still probably my first go-to website to find scholarships.
Okay. What's the optimal number of applications for someone to submit?
That's going to vary greatly from student to student. Some students can, over the course of their high school career, hit about 100, which is what my son did. He started applying before his senior year. Others, because of their commitments and maybe academic abilities, might struggle to even do a dozen. More is always better.
Sure.
So yeah.
What is the most overlooked scholarship category?
Ooh, overlooked scholarship category. Well, I'm gonna flip that question a little bit. I'm gonna say the most over scrutinized scholarship category is my student has this in their background. Maybe it's overcoming a medical challenge or something that they feel is unique to the student.
Okay.
We talked about there's a scholarship for left-handers.
Right.
Okay, fantastic. If you're left-handed, definitely apply for that scholarship for left-handers. But that doesn't mean you win because you're left-handed. You still have to have that strong personal narrative, and you still have to submit a quality application. So I think the issue is that parents think that just because the student qualifies that they're automatically a winner, and you always are competing for these scholarships. It's very rare that a scholarship is just handed to a student. Now, there are some, we said that, $100 million goes unclaimed. So certainly there are scholarships that are not getting applications. And, I'm thinking of one student a couple of years ago I worked with who applied for one scholarship, and she was the only person who applied. So she got it. But
nice.
that is going to be few and far between. So yeah, definitely if your student has a unique story, a unique background, whatever, and there's a scholarship, by all means apply, but you still have to have that narrative.
Okay. What's one thing to avoid in this process?
Um, ooh. Well, applying for illegitimate scholarships would be one. We
Okay.
talked a little bit about that. Well, I think one of the other issues I see is that a lot of people will say it's not worth applying for outside scholarships. Just chase the merit aid from the college that you're going to go to. For most students, merit aid will probably be the biggest dollar amount of scholarships that they get. But merit aid is not guaranteed unless it is. Some colleges will put on their website, if your student has this GPA plus this test score, assuming they're admitted, and they probably would be, they're going to get this exact amount in scholarship funds. And if that's the school that your student wants to go to and you meet those requirements, fantastic. But unless it's a full ride, there's still opportunity out there to cover the rest of that.
Yeah.
And like you talked about, to maybe roll over into an IRA or something.
Yeah. All right. And then we have one tradition on Wealth on the Move, the podcast, and I wish it was my own. I've totally stolen this from the Diary of a CEO podcast. We ask a question that our previous guest asked. So,
okay.
John Sabis, author, entrepreneur, we had a great conversation about wealth and longevity and health. And his question was, what advice would your older self give you right now?
Well, I want to keep it on theme. I would have started saving for college earlier than we did and more aggressively than we did. I think, in fact, I just was listening to a podcast earlier from another show related to college admissions, and they talked about intentionality. And I think that would be the advice I would give my younger self would be to be very intentional about this college preparation process, from the financial aspect to guiding your student, through the academics, through the things outside of school that are going to build that personal narrative. I will say I was very fortunate that my son knew from a young age what he wanted to do. So we had that intentionality there almost by accident. And, I see all the time on Facebook, parents that are just kind of struggling with that. And, the more intentional you can be, the earlier you're thinking about preparing for college, the more success the student's likely to have.
Awesome. Now, your turn. What question would you like to ask our next guest?
Do I get to know who the next guest is?
Ironically, if I knew who the next guest was, I would say yes, but I don't even know who the next guest is going to be yet.
All right. Well, I guess what advice? Oh, I'll think about this. What would I like my son to know? My son's a young professional at this point. What advice would you give to a young professional who's really just starting out in their career in terms of making themselves employable for the next 30 to 40 years?
Okay. It's awesome. It's a great question. I know that's something that, again, as a father of 3 young boys, I worry about all the time is what do they need to be learning and understanding that they're not getting in school, or that's going to be applicable regardless of the discipline that they go into.
Yeah.
Dave, where can our listeners find, follow, research, and check out your services?
Best place would be my website, www.scholarshipgps.com. And you do have to put those W's. My website's a little broken in that respect. So it's www.scholarshipgps.com.
Okay. So check them out, follow, learn, understand what is available to you and your students. This could be a windfall. This could be and windfall is kind of a strong word, but this could be the catalyst that puts your student on a path to financial success, helps them overcome school loan debt that we know is a challenge when they graduate, and really, removes that from their trajectory. I know I'm going to check out the website. I've checked it out already, but I know that I've already got some things that I've written down for my 14-year-old to get started on, and can't wait. So, Dave, thank you very much. If you want to check out our website, hoffmanwealth.com, that's the best way to follow us and our content. In addition to that, I'm very active on LinkedIn. The firm has a very active LinkedIn page, Facebook page, Instagram page. You can check out clips from upcoming guests and upcoming shows, and always find our past shows there. But until next time, Please remember, keep your wealth moving. Will Hoffman offers investment advice through Private Advisor Group, which is a federally registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult with the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.
Dave Peterson and Scholarship GPS are not affiliated with Hoffman Wealth Management and Private Advisor Group. This presentation is not intended as specific financial advice for any individual.